Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. I have been wanting to make this video for such a long time, but I've also been a little bit reluctant to make this video just purely for the fact that Anthurium for me has been probably out of every single genus of plant in my collection over the years has probably been the most difficult for me. And there are some, don't get me wrong, there are some that I feel really confident with and some that I'm like, yep, I have got that one down. And then there's others that I just don't seem to be able to figure out the balance with and I am constantly struggling with. And I guess what I was kind of hoping, and the reason I was a little bit reluctant to make this video, is that I was hoping I might be able to, I don't know, come back to you in a few months' time and be like, haha, there we go guys, I've sussed them all. I'm really, really great with antheriums now. And I just don't think that that is going to be the case. So I've currently got 23 species of anthurium in my collection. I'm going to take you through all of them today, and I'm just going to chat to you a little bit about my growing experience with them. But first, if you're new here, hi, my name's Claire and this is Yoli. I make videos all about houseplant care, sharing tips and tricks I've learnt over the years to help keep your plants happy and healthy. And yeah, as I say, I've got 23 species I want to take you through today, so this is probably going to be quite a long video. So by all means, make a cup of tea, cup of coffee, grab some plants to repot. And yes, I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it. So I know I often say with these kind of videos that I haven't put these plants in any particular order and it's all just random. Today I thought I would rank these plants purely because there is a correlation between the ones that are doing very badly and the ones that are doing very well. So we're going to start with the ones that have been the most difficult for me and the ones that I'm just really struggling with, and we're going to work up to the ones that are really beautiful and have just been easy and are just wonderful. So hopefully this video will get better and better. A few of the ones that I'm going to show you to start with actually don't have any leaves on them currently because I'm just kind of rehabbing them, so I will put some pictures on the screen so you can see what they look like. But the first one is this one here, and this is an Anthurium metallicum. And the first time I saw this antherium, I'm pretty sure it was a social media thing, I saw it pop up and I was just blown away. I was like, oh my goodness, it's gorgeous. I would just love to add this type of anthurium to my collection, and it's just been one thing after another and it has just not gone well for me. And as you can see, it is starting to give me a new leaf here, and although that is quite promising and quite exciting, based on my experience with the plant over the last kind of, I think, 8 months that I've owned it, I know that the cycle that it seems to go through is giving me a new leaf, that leaf looking lovely for, I don't know, a week or two, and then it just really going downhill and that leaf yellowing and dying off. And I know it might sound like this is potentially flat mite related or pest related in some way. I have checked this plant countless times. I've had it under the microscope. I feel like I've done everything right and I just can't figure it out. So yeah, I'm also currently growing it in a very perlitey sphagnum moss mix, and this has done really well for other kinds of anthuriums. This is kind of my go-to for a lot of anthuriums when things aren't going that well. And yeah, just nothing I have done so far has seemed to keep this plant happy. So I'm persevering and I'm hoping that at some point I can get my head around it, because the potential of this plant, as I say, is just insane. But it's been a little while now and I just have not quite been able to figure it out. So with any of these ones, in fact, if any of you have some tips, please comment them down below. I would be so insanely grateful. If any of you are successfully growing this plant, let me know what you're doing right. But then the next one is one that some of you may roll your eyes at and go, oh God, Claire, why are you doing this to yourself again? Because I have lost a few of these plants now. But this is the Anthurium warocqueanum, and I did kind of say probably about 5 months ago, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to try again with this plant for the foreseeable future. I'm going to wait until maybe I move and have a new environment and then I'll try again. And then I came across this one on eBay and it was very, I think it was under 20 quid. It was a very good price on the plant. And I was like, you know what? I'm not documenting this on YouTube, maybe just for myself. I would just have a play about off camera. And that's exactly what I've been doing. And Although it's not going as badly as it has done in the past, I've obviously still got some leaves here. Its most beautiful big leaf just there, I did actually lose, I think about 3 weeks ago, and I took a picture, I'll put it on the screen. But I came home after a few days away, and I don't know if I just hadn't spotted it before I went away, or maybe it was an infestation that had just kind of struck up very quickly. But its main big leaf was covered in thrips, absolutely covered. I washed it down with some horticultural soap and I gave it a very light spray with isopropyl alcohol, and I think just probably because the thrips had really got into like the flesh of the plant, the isopropyl alcohol, or I assume that's what it was, just caused the leaf to become very mottled and almost burnt. So I had instant regret with that. I saw the leaf starting to kind of go a little bit, it looked a bit waterlogged immediately, and then I looked back the next day and I was like, oh, it looks horrible. So although I could have kept the leaf, I was like, at this stage it has been pretty thrip ridden. Is there any benefit in doing that? So I chopped it back, and as you can see, it is currently getting ready to give me a new leaf there, which is very encouraging. And it's also, so as you can see, I'm growing it in no drainage. This is a system that has worked so well for so many of my anthuriums. As we move up the list and see some more success stories, you'll see. But I've just got a little semi-hydro reservoir on the bottom, then I've got a chunky mix, then I've got some sphagnum moss up the top here, which as you can see is doing great things for the aerial roots around the top of the plant. So in theory, I think, or I feel like this should be a good way of growing this plant, but yeah, I am still encountering issues in it. Again, like as I say, any advice would be appreciated, but I'm feeling hopeful. I'm monitoring this one so carefully. Despite what I said about the thrips, I am now monitoring this plant so carefully, and I do hope that I can get my head around this one, because it's got to be one of the most beautiful anthuriums and one that I just adore, and I would love to be able to grow well. I've never been able to grow this plant well, and it's frustrating because I'm like, I should be able to do it. But yeah, also I was going to say, majority of my anthuriums are either under my grow lights here in my cabinet or over by that window. In fact, I don't think I have any of my anthuriums through in the bedroom. In fact, I'm sure I don't. So yeah, all of them are receiving kind of bright indirect light, decent levels of humidity, always above 50%, and not too hot, because I know a lot of anthuriums don't like excessive heat, but I do try to keep the stable kind of room temperature between 20 and 25 degrees in this room if I possibly can. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment. And I've got a couple more very sad ones that I'll show you. I'll whiz through these quite quickly and then we can get on to the more interesting ones. But this one is the Anthurium bulletus. And again, you can't see much at the moment, but there are, if you look very, very closely, a couple of little, oh, there we go, a couple of little growth points that are coming back up. This is a really gorgeous, gorgeous loby anthurium that I got, probably about a year ago now. And there has been points in which I've grown this plant where it has been looking quite good and quite healthy. I've never managed to get it past the 2-leaf club. It's always just stuck with 2 leaves, and then something will always go a little bit wrong, whether it's fungal. This is such a susceptible one to fungal issues. And I believe pesty as well, although I think the last time it was just stuck in the 1-leaf club for about 4 months, and I was just like, ugh. So I, again, lopped it back and put it into a prop box. And it's such a lovely one. And again, it's just one that, like, I feel like I've got ones with a very similar, and you'll see when we get to them, but like a very similar structure in my collection, but I just so far haven't been able to master this one or feel like I really know it that well. And yeah, this is one I've had for quite a while, and I just have not been able to get my head around. So we will see. Stay tuned again. And then this one here, this is a Pallidiflorum cross. I'm not exactly sure what the ID of it is. Again, it's currently not looking like much at all. And in fact, some of these plants I do have clips of when they were looking healthy in my collection, so I can put some clips in. But this one, again, I have just found is so susceptible to pests. And I'm making it out like I've got a really, really pesty collection. On the whole, I feel like I'm quite good at managing pests, but there's certain types of plant that I do find are just kind of like a magnet for them. Like everything else in an area will be absolutely fine, and then there will be one plant or two plants that just seem to attract everything. And this has been one of those plants for me. So again, it's in the prop box. I think maybe I might actually transfer this one to sphagnum moss in the same way that I did with the metallicum, like this. But yeah, currently there's not a lot to show. And then we're moving on to these slightly more, well, definitely more aesthetically pleasing anthuriums, but ones that are still at the edge of struggleville as opposed to me feeling confident with them. And this is the Anthurium Regal Magnificum hybrid, and it's got to be one of my most beautiful, beautiful anthuriums. And I got this one as an import plant probably about 5 months ago now-ish, if I'm estimating. And it's done okay for me, but I feel like I've gone into this one a little bit nervous because the pure Regal is a type of anthurium, very similarly actually to the warocqueanum, that I have just found to be so difficult to grow. And I did have, in fact, I've had several chunks from my big Regal in my collection. And in fact, one of them I do still own, but it is not in this video, it's in a prop box somewhere. But it's currently giving me absolutely no growth, and I have just found to be very, very difficult. So when I saw that this was a Regal hybrid, I was quite excited because typically, not always, but typically hybrid plants of any sort do tend to be a little bit more resilient. I think just because they've got two different gene pools from different parent plants, a lot of the time they're less susceptible to disease, pests, fungal issues, you name it. And so far I want to say this one has been easy. Oh, I mean, so much easier than the Regal, but I want to say it has been okay to grow. It's one that's very much kept me on my toes, and in fact it is currently starting to give me a new leaf there, which is so exciting. But it took a while to get going. The first few months of me owning it, I didn't have any growth on it at all. Then it gave me this leaf, and again, this looks, again, I thought it was fungal, and then I thought it was pesty because you can kind of see like up there those tracks on it. But again, I haven't been able to see anything that's signaled that this plant is either suffering from a fungal disease or is infested with pests. Again, I've had it under the microscope. And actually, now that this leaf's hardened off, that seems to have just stabilised. It's just been left with quite a lot of damage. So I'm guessing that perhaps there might have been a little something that went on when the leaf was very young and was still hardening off that maybe I didn't spot. And as the leaf has grown, it's just kind of displayed that more prominently, because obviously anthurium leaves, as you can see, do come in really quite, in fact this one's coming in quite big already, but do come in really quite small, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that is one thing that I love about the genus so much. I love when I've got a new leaf coming in, I love trying to predict how big it's going to get. There's a few of those to show you in this video as well. But yeah, this is actually probably, despite the fact that it's quite low on this list, I would say it's probably one of my favourite anthuriums. It's just one that I don't feel that confident with yet. And as you can see, I am just growing this one in pure sphagnum moss, just because I feel like it's a really good way to be able to monitor the roots. As you can see, I can kind of see all through there what's going on. And it seems happy like that. And you can absolutely grow anthuriums long term in sphagnum moss. It does very much replicate their natural habitat, and I have had success doing it with lots of anthuriums in my collection long term. So currently I have no plans to change this up, just because the plant is now growing well for me. But yeah, I still feel like it's very early days with this one. I feel like I don't know it as well as some of the others, hence why it is a little bit lower down. And the same goes for this next one, and this is such a special one. It is my Anthurium Delta Force. And the last time I showed you this one, this leaf here, I was a little bit worried about because again, it looks like the tip might be affected by something fungal. I did do a baking soda fungicide treatment on this one, and I did chop the tip of the leaf off. And that was, at least a month ago now. So I want to say that's kind of contained any issues, and it has been fine since then. It has also just given me this leaf here, which is absolutely perfect. So it's a very young plant, and until it does kind of get into giving me a little bit more mature growth, they are very, very vulnerable. Hence why, as you can see, I'm just growing this one under a cup for humidity and just kind of environmental protection. Again, it lives over by the window. And yeah, again, in sphagnum moss as well. And that seems fine for the time being, but it's just one that, oh my goodness. Oh, it's getting ready to give me a new leaf as well. Oh, look at that. It's so diddy and small, but it's right there in the middle. How exciting. But yeah, this is just a plant that at the beginning of the year, I would have thought, or if you'd said to me, you'll have this plant, I would have thought, oh my God, that's so unattainable, because this plant, until it went into tissue culture, and even now it's in tissue culture, it is still very expensive to buy. But yeah, you see this plant going for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds. At the beginning of the year, it was thousands, hence why I never thought I would be able to acquire this plant. But I actually found this one for £75 on Etsy, which is so amazing. I was absolutely over the moon. I got it from the Eden Lab, which a lovely guy called Mark runs, and oh my God, yeah, I was so happy when I found it. But yeah, that's the only reason. As I say, it's still a very vulnerable seedling, and one that I feel I don't know very well yet. That's why it is so far down this list, but it's one that I think so far so good. I feel like I've been able to kind of get issues under control with it so far, so I hope we keep just going upwards, and hopefully this plant will grow big and beautiful. And then this next little one, this is one that I have really, again, over the years struggled with. And again, it looks like not a lot at the moment because it is very small. But this is the Anthurium veitchii. And this is one of the first more unusual anthuriums that I added to my collection, probably, oh God, getting on for maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. And I got it as a little plant that I found on eBay, not this exact plant, but I got it as a little plant that I found on eBay, and I found it really easy to grow. And maybe I don't know, maybe it was beginner's luck. I grew it really happily for I think probably about 6 months, maybe even a little bit longer. It gave me beautiful growth. It was sizing up pretty well. And then all of a sudden one day I suddenly noticed there was something going wrong with the plant. I can't remember exactly what the symptoms were, but there was something going on with the foliage. I checked the roots and the roots were just rotten. So I'd obviously accidentally overwatered it at some point. And then if you watched my import video from earlier this year, I was sent the most beautiful Anthurium veitchii with leaves like that. It was absolutely insane, and I couldn't believe it. And again, that one rotted, and I was just like, oh my God, I feel like I have no luck with this plant. And then I got this one, which again did have bigger leaves at one point, and it started to rot again. And I was like, oh my God, what is it with me in this plant? Typically, I'm not an overwaterer. Like with the rest of my collection, I always say I teeter on the edge of underwatering as opposed to overwatering. But yeah, I essentially decided to, when I started seeing issues with this one, I was like, I'm going to chop it back and I'm going to restart the plant and try again. And that is what I have done. And for the last 3 or 4 months, I would say it has been stable. Again, very similarly to how I've grown some of the others. I've got a layer of, I think this is leca at the bottom with then a chunky mix on top. No drainage again. And it's doing okay. It's doing okay. It's obviously alive, and it is just very, I mean, you might not even be able to see this on camera, but it has got the start of a very little new leaf just there. But it's just one that I feel very, again, a little bit nervous around, and I want to do well, but yeah, I just don't feel like I know it properly yet. And I, at one stage, felt like I did. So yeah, that's why it's here. But I do have faith that things have been going well and have been stable for a little while now. So I would hope it's on the road to recovery. But again, as I say, I'll keep you updated. I'll keep you updated with all of these, but yeah, now we're moving into ones that are slightly, I would say those are the like real struggle ones. This next bunch I would say are the ones that are pretty stable. I feel pretty confident with. And the first one, oh my goodness, almost knocked another one off. But the first one is one that I really haven't had for that long, hence why it is quite low down in this section. But it's the Anthurium Draconopterum, and this was such a wish list anthurium for me for such a long time, and I am so happy that I finally acquired it. I got this one along with actually quite a few of my anthuriums from Eastern Tropicals, which I've banged on about before. They are amazing. But in my short time of owning it, I've only owned it a couple of months, it is already giving me a new leaf, which is so exciting, because my fear with this plant was kind of like this one was going to be like the Anthurium bullatus, the one that was very low down this list, right at the bottom, because they've got quite a similar structure, and actually texturally, I know it's probably not super obvious on camera, but they feel quite similar. Like they're thinner than you might think, and I don't know, there's so many similarities between the two that I was like, I hope I don't really struggle with this one as well. And this one so far, as I say, I know it is early days, but so far has been a doddle for me. I found it so easy to care for, no acclimation grief whatsoever, and the fact that it's giving me a new leaf this early on just makes me feel like I'm doing something right. So yes, it's very strange when I put this against other types of anthurium that in fact even have like very similar, like originate from similar places and seemingly have very similar environmental needs. I'm like, they've been next to each other. Why is one fine and one's not? I don't know the answer to that currently, but this one I'm actually growing. As I say, I've done a lot of experimentation with anthuriums, but this one I have got in drainage. This is in a, can't get it out, but a pot that drains all the way through. And this is just a normal soil ninja base mix with lots of bark in there. So maybe actually I should try the same mix for ones like the bullatus and the metallicum and see how I get on. I've also remembered another struggle anthurium that I haven't included on this list, and that is the Anthurium angamarcanum, which again I have in a prop box somewhere. That's, I believe, a vining anthurium, and I chopped that up into wet sticks and I put it in a prop box because I just couldn't do it anymore. But no, this one is gorgeous, and I'm so excited again for the potential of this plant. This one has the potential to get absolutely huge. And I don't know where I will put it when it gets absolutely huge, but I'm just really excited to hopefully continue to bring out the best in this one. And yeah, it's just such an unusual, really cool one. And although this next one is, or has been, should I say, quite easy, the only reason that I've put it not right near the top is because in the last, I want to say the last like 8 months, it's become a little bit of a struggle for me. And it's the Anthurium magnificum. And I got this one when I was living back at my mum's house from my friend Emma, Good Growing. And I had so much luck with this plant. This plant I just found so easy to grow. It was sizing up so quickly. Like, if you've watched my videos for a while, you might remember one of the leaves it gave me at one point was literally like that big. It was huge and it was so beautiful. And then I can't actually remember where the drama started, but I have a feeling it's when I ran out of space and had to move it further back from the window. And I, in fact, had it up on top of the fridge for a while, which is a low light spot. So that's probably where the drama started. But yeah, it gave me this leaf, which as you can see it's okay. It's just looking a little bit battered and crispy here or there. It hasn't had pests or anything like that, but it just looks a little bit unhappy. I always find as well, especially when I'm using my light box, things tend to look a little bit better on camera than they do in real life. It looks a bit more kind of glossy and glamorous on camera, as do I. But the good thing is with this one, it has got a new growth point just there, and that is the first new growth point in a really long time. So I feel like I'm kind of making leeway with this plant. Maybe this is the start of it kind of, I don't know, bouncing back to where it was before, because I have moved it back over by the window. Obviously, if it gives me another ginormous leaf, I'm going to have to think about repositioning again. But yeah, that feels like the place where it was happy before and therefore will be happy again. So I feel like I can figure it out with this plant. This is why it's not right at the bottom. And also I'm growing this one again a little bit differently. I've got a layer of sphagnum moss on the top, but underneath it is just a kind of like a barky, soily mix again. You can kind of see through there. And again, this is just because I wanted to kind of air layer some of the aerial roots at the top of the plant. And actually, they haven't really kicked into action yet. They're not doing a huge amount, but this can also just be quite a good way to monitor some of your plants that enjoy larger amounts of water, because when this starts to dry out, then typically you'll know it's time to check the soil further down. And this is an anthurium that, I mean, one of my thirstier anthuriums. I was going to say as well, and this might be obvious to a lot of you, but just because these plants are in the same genus, different species within the plants have very different care needs. I feel like that's probably quite obvious from my experience with them, but I just wanted to point that out just in case you didn't know. And yeah, this is one that I do find to be a little bit more of a guzzler when it comes to water than some of my others. But yeah, I'm confident that it will bounce back, but for the time being, it's just looking a little bit unhappy. And then I've got this little mystery anthurium, and I keep meaning to message my friend that I got it off. I'm pretty sure it's a King of Spades cross red crystallinum, I think, but I'm not entirely sure about that. And again, this one it's been easy-ish to grow, but it has been one that's been quite susceptible to pests. The last leaf I chopped back because it did have thrips, again, juvenile thrips that just get right into the cells of your plant. And often I do find, especially if a leaf is already a little bit far gone with pests, I'm like, chop it off, reset the plant, start again. And that is exactly what I did. And it's given me this beautiful new little leaf, and it really is stunning. So yeah, the only thing I would say so far is that this one does seem quite slow to grow. I've had it probably getting on for a year now, and in fact, I got it from my friend for Christmas last year, so yeah, it was about a year ago. And yeah, this is what it's looking like. So I feel like it could be further along, maybe, had I put more measures in place to keep it pest-free. I do just think, in general, at this time of year, it is very pesty, and especially if you've got lots of plants that have to be touching, if one gets something, then if you don't notice it immediately, then chances are all of them in that area are going to get it. And that has been the case for a lot of my particularly velvet leaf anthuriums, because they're obviously very, very delicious to pests. But no, it's a really gorgeous one, and I will get an absolute accurate ID on it, and I will keep you updated with it and show you how it sizes up, because it's one that I am really, really excited about. Oh, and this next one as well, I'm so excited about. And I got this lovely one from the last London plant swap I went to, and it is another Regal hybrid. This is an Anthurium Regal cross Blue Bessier Aff, I believe. And this one has been really easy so far for me. However, there's been just a few little things that have made me put it a little bit further down this list, such as the fact that, and this is actually my own fault, so I don't really know why I'm saying this, but such as the fact that when I went to repot it recently, it had got a little bit of root rot, but I do know for a fact that that is the way that I was growing the plant. Like, if I'd put better measures in place, like better drainage, then that wouldn't have happened. Again, just for the time being, while its roots are rehabbing, I have just put it into a cup with sphagnum moss, just so that it can grow more healthy roots and continue hopefully to size up, because this is the only leaf it's given me since owning it so far. There's a little bit of damage at the bottom, but again, I do think that might have happened in transit, because this leaf was kind of starting to appear as I was bringing the plant home. So yeah, it's just a really, really gorgeous one. I'm so excited to grow it, because as I say, the Regal is just one that I have struggled with, and the hybrids seem to be easier, and I just love them. The Regal makes such beautiful hybrids. So yeah, very excited, but it is very, very early days. I've only had this one for a couple of months. So again, stay tuned. And then this is quite exciting, and I've actually got multiples of this plant in my collection currently. And in fact, maybe I'll grab another one to show you, because it's growing, in fact, one sec. Yeah, so it's growing in very different ways, despite the fact that I am growing them in very similar conditions. So you wouldn't currently, although it's very juvenile, believe that perhaps this was the same type of plant. This is supposedly a pure papy, a pure papillominum. That is such a tongue twister. But yeah, and I can see, obviously, I think it's 100% got papy in it. I'm like, and as I say, it's such early days with this plant, but I'm not convinced it's pure. If anything, it looks more similar currently to the King of Spades crystallinum. So yeah, I'm intrigued, but as I say, I've got several seedlings that all do seem to be developing slightly differently. So I'm gonna say it's a pure papillonominum, but I don't know. I hope it is. I really hope it is, just because, as I've said before, I'm so interested and excited by antherium hybridization. I know the papy, again, makes beautiful, beautiful hybrids. And I would love to be able to play about with pollination with this plant at some point. Not that I couldn't do that if it wasn't a pure papy, because I absolutely can. But yeah, I'm just intrigued to see how it sizes up. And in fact, at the bottom there, those are some other little babies from the same batch of seeds, because I got these as seeds. Sorry, I didn't grow these from seed. I got these as very small tissue culture babies in the same import as the Magnificum Regal that I showed you. So yeah, they're all developing at very different rates, and I'm just excited to see what they do next, because whatever it is, it looks like it's going to be very, very beautiful. And just looking at the plants, I'm pretty sure we're either halfway or just over halfway. I'm just going to change my camera battery very quickly and then we will continue. Fabulous. And then this next one, I actually brought over the little baby plant to show you of this one, even though I do have a big full mother plant. Firstly, because I ran out of space to bring anthuriums over. And secondly, because this one is very special to me, because not only did I grow it from seed, I actually pollinated the mother plant and I got the seeds myself. And it was such an amazing process, and something that, as I say, has sparked a passion for wanting to do it much more. But this is an Anthurium clarinervium baby, and I love the Anthurium clarinervium so much. It is one of the staple antheriums in my collection. I find it very easy on the whole to grow. Again, I would say the only downside with this plant, and again it's potentially because it's another very velvety one, but it is quite susceptible to pests. I have had pests on my clarinervium on and off over the years. But this also is giving me a little leaf there, which is very exciting because it's really, really, really starting to size up now. But I started pollinating this one, oh my goodness, or the mother plant of this, should I say, probably about 2.5 years ago now, because it was when I moved in here, which was 2 years ago now, or over 2 years ago now. That's when I first harvested the berries. And this was obviously one of the berries, one of the seeds, and it's grown this beautiful little plant. And I just feel a real attachment to this one in a way that, not that I don't with my other plants, but I feel like this one's extra special because I look at it and I just go, if I didn't do that, this plant wouldn't exist, and it just makes me feel very proud. So yeah, I haven't actually since then haven't had any successful pollination with my anthuriums, because I've tried very much to hybridize, and it's something that I know very little about, and I'm just kind of dipping a toe in the water with and experimenting with. But I did find the Anthurium clarinervium pollination a fairly simple process. Maybe I was just lucky, I don't know, but I found it a fairly simple process, but a very long process. I think the seeds were not from pollination to harvest. I think it took over a year. I have made specific videos on this and kind of taking you through the step-by-step of how to do it. I'll link them down below, in fact, so if you want to go and watch them, you can. But yeah, it's just a beautiful, beautiful anthurium. I feel like this one would be, in fact, probably from here on out, all of the ones I'm going to talk about, but very much this one would be a fantastic beginner anthurium. Like, if you're not that familiar with anthuriums, you just want to figure things out for the first time. This was one of my first ones, if not my first one, this species of anthurium. So yeah, I'm currently growing it again with sphagnum moss on top, and then underneath it's got a chunky soil mix. And I'm growing this one in terracotta just to kind of regulate watering a little bit, just because it has got a very small root system currently, and although it's in a very chunky mix, I want to be able to make sure I don't accidentally overwater it while it is still very young and juvenile. So yeah, I'll probably move it to plastic at some point, but for the time being, that is how it's growing, and it's doing really, really well. And this is another one that is still very juvenile at the moment, but I'm very, very excited about. And this is the Anthurium SPL Condor. And oh my goodness, again, I will have to put some pictures on the screen so that I can show you what this plant looks like when it's big and mature, but it is just gorgeous. And I know I've spoken so much about my love for like loby plants in this video. You will see very much why I love it when it's big and mature, because it's so pretty. And I've had this one for maybe 5 or 6 months now, and although it is still a baby and it is one that I keep a very close eye on, it has been next to plants that have had so many issues, and it has just given me no grief at all, hence why it is further up the list. And it is also currently giving me a new leaf, which is so exciting, because obviously as the plant sizes up and matures, that's when it starts to develop the lovely lobiness. And although it hasn't started happening yet, you can actually see by looking at that leaf compared to, for example, one of the more juvenile leaves, you can see it's starting to develop a little bit more of that shape. So I would have thought that with every new leaf now, it will just continue to get a little bit more and a little bit more. And again, it's another one that I'm growing in a very similar no drainage system. I've got semi-hydro on the bottom, chunky mix on top, and then sphagnum moss on top of that for the aerial roots. And it seems to just be keeping this plant so happy. As I say, this is one that I constantly check on because I feel like it should be more vulnerable than it is, but it very rarely, in fact, I say very rarely gives me grief. It has never given me grief. So yeah, although it's very young, it is one that I would probably recommend for beginners. It is one as well that I predict will probably drop in price quite a bit. It's at the beginning of this year, again, it's one nowhere near as much as like the Delta Force or anything like that, but it is one that was not particularly accessible. I've had this one on my wish list for ages, and I only came by it fairly recently. So yeah, I have noticed that the price has significantly dropped as the plant has become more and more available. So yes, I think I'm right in saying that I paid maybe £30 for this or something, which for a young plant of this species, I think it probably is quite a good price that I paid. Again, I believe I got this from Eastern Tropicals, which is just such a great place for anthuriums. But yeah, I'm so excited to see what it does for me as it continues to size up, and I can't wait to see what that leaf looks like. And then I've put this one quite high up the list, and I'm second guessing myself now, because actually this is a plant that I only got literally a couple of weeks ago. I got this sent to me by Grow Tropicals. I did a collaboration video with them where they very kindly sent me some plants that they thought were going to be like the next it plants of 2025. And this is an Anthurium Crystal Hope. And I don't know why I've put it this high up the list, because obviously I haven't grown it for that long. I've had this plant for a couple of weeks, if that. I can say that in my time of owning it so far, it's got 2 new leaves. If you look down there, look at that. 2 new leaves already getting ready to unfurl, and I don't remember seeing them when I first got the plant. So I do think it's going to be quite a fast one to grow. And the other reason that I think it's probably going to be quite an easy plant to grow is purely for the fact that I know when I first got this one, I was like, I'm not sure what kind of hybrid it is. And actually, it's not, or it is a hybrid, but it's a specific hybrid that was put into tissue culture, I believe, of the Anthurium crystallinum. And I'm just about to show you a crystallinum. So I'll put them next to each other. You can see there's a lot of similarities. But this one, when I first looked at it, I almost thought maybe had some like Doriaki or something like that in it, because it's got such wide silver veination. And yeah, I think that's probably why I've grouped it with my crystallinums and crystallinum hybrids for this section of the video, because obviously they have been very, very easy for me. But assuming it continues to grow in that same way, I think it will be, touch wood, a walk in the park, because those ones have been. So yeah, it's early days, but it's one, again, that I'm so excited to grow. Similar way of growing as well, no drainage, semi-hydro, chunky mix, lots of bark, and as I say, so far it seems fine. I won't say too much about that one because obviously it's not an accurate representation of growing over time. But moving on to, as I say, my crystallinum is the one I just showed you. This is a very, very young crystallinum. I got this one, I believe I actually got this one at Malvern, and they weren't quite sure what it was, and I'm pretty sure it is a crystallinum, just a pure crystallinum, but it's been so easy for me, so easy. It's grown in high light, low light. It's currently growing over by my TV, which, as you can see, has got a grow bar underneath it, but previously I didn't have anything there and the plant still put out growth there. Again, I have struggled a little bit with pests with it. You can see there is some pest damage on this leaf, but it does appear now to be pest free and the plant is just growing beautifully for me. Look at those roots. Aren't they crazy? So yeah, then moving on to a beautiful crystallinum hybrid, and this one is sizing up so quickly. This is the crystallinum magnificum hybrid, and if I just hold that next to my face, just look at the size of that leaf. It's absolutely gorgeous. And this is like what I was saying earlier in the video about the magnificum having the potential to like ridiculously size up. I don't know, considering the crystallinum doesn't typically get much past this from what I've seen as like in a home environment, I'm wondering just how much this one's going to continue to size up, because that is a pretty significant jump even from this leaf here. And I've been thinking it over the last few days, and in fact you can tell on camera, I have a feeling this leaf might be getting ready to die off just because it's looking a little bit more yellow, and I don't know why that is. I can only assume that maybe it is just environmental change at this time of year, because I haven't got any specific like special conditions in place for this plant currently. It's over by my window. I don't really know why it would be doing this, and maybe it's not getting ready to die off. It just is indicating that it might not be totally happy. But yeah, apart from that, on the whole, I have found this one just very straightforward to grow. As I say, it grows quickly, sizes up quickly. I have lopped back various leaves that it's had in the past. It hasn't just been these 2 leaves. And sometimes I find that when, I mean, any genus of plant, but specifically antheriums, start to really size up, they often let go of some of their older, smaller leaves to kind of conserve their energy. And so I typically just, when they start yellowing, chop them back. So I'm not sure if I should do that with this yet. I think I will give it some time and see what's going on. But this one here, I keep meaning to layer some sphagnum moss around the top, because as you can see, it's got loads of aerial roots that if I was to air layer with some moss would really kind of start putting out, going down into the, I was going to say soil, but actually this is not soil. This is pretty much exclusively tree fern fibre, which looks like that. I don't know why my camera's not focusing very well today. Yeah, looks like that. There's a little bit of perlite in there, but it's pretty much completely tree fern fibre, and does seem to be keeping this one really happy. From here on out as well, I ran out of space in the kitchen, so I'm going to have to go and get the plants as I'm talking about them. But this one is the Anthurium morona, and I got this one, I think, at about the beginning of the year, so about a year ago now, when I was first getting into kind of strappy antheriums. And I have said it before, but I'm just so obsessed with texture in plants, and I think when you've got lots of plants, something like this with just kind of long pendanty leaves just really stands out and just looks so gorgeous. And I've got several, and again I will show you them in a moment, but I've got several other velvety strappy plants, and this one is much waxier and much shinier. And again, I just like looking at this one amongst my other ones, and I have found it so easy to grow as well. It hasn't been the fastest grower. If I remember correctly, it had 2 leaves when I first got it. So I think it's given me 1 leaf in my time of owning it. And it is also getting ready to give me another one. But obviously that is almost a year's worth of growth, so it does take a little while. I don't know, maybe it should have been having higher light conditions, but when I first got it, I was growing it through in the bedroom, which doesn't have quite as good light as this room. And I don't think it was under grow lights, and then I moved it through here and it went into my window, and that's when it's kind of started doing a little bit more for me. So yeah, it's just a really robust, really hardy anthurium, and one that I just adore. I'm so excited about this one, and I also just really love that the main vein is white. Like, I know that's such a weird thing to say, but like there's another one, for example, that I'll show you in a moment that has more of a green vein, and I just love that strip of white coming down the middle. I think it looks so elegant and so lovely. So yeah, this is one that I would highly, highly, highly recommend. And another strappy anthurium that I am absolutely loving is the Anthurium vitarifolium. And this one, as I was just saying with the last one having the white veination, this one doesn't have any white on the veination. It's very, very green. But again, I do just like how that contrasts with ones that then do have the white veination. It just makes them all feel very, I mean, they are very individual, unique plants, but do you know what I mean? I just like having variety. But this one again was actually very kindly sent to me by one of you guys at the beginning of the year, and it is sized up so much. Like, its biggest leaf is now below my waist. It is getting so, so, so big, and it has given me very little grief at all. I think I did have some juvenile thrips on one of the leaves at one point, but it did respond very well to a pest treatment, and I haven't had to pest treat it again. I'm just growing this one. You can kind of see I've got it in a tower pot, but I'm growing it in a chunky soil mix, and I've made it a little sphagnum moss collar, which again, I typically just monitor, and when that dries out, I check the soil. It is in fact very dry now, so I should probably give this one a water through, assuming it's ready. But yeah, it's been very fast to grow. It's given me several inflorescences in the time of owning it as well. I haven't tried playing about with pollination with this one yet, just because I haven't really known much about the types of anthurium that I might be able to hybridize this one with. So if any of you know, I'd be really interested to know. But yeah, it's given me a few inflows in the last year, and in fact, I was going to say it's getting ready to give me a new leaf, but there's signs of an inflorescence just behind that leaf there as well. So yeah, maybe in the new year I can have a play about with that. But no, I just think it's gorgeous. It's such a lovely one, and one that I just don't have to worry about, which is so nice. And then this one, I have said it so many times before. Firstly, it's very difficult to hold up and actually show you in shots because it is so big now. But it is one of my, if not my favourite plant, and it is the Anthurium pallidiflorum, and this one ticks all the boxes for me. It's got the lovely velvety leaves, it's got the white veination, it's just so gorgeous. And the last leaf it gave me that has hardened off, I think I measured it and it was about 110 centimetres, which is obviously well over a metre, and it's just giving me this one at the moment, which is very much still sizing up and hardening off, and I feel like it's probably going to be even bigger. So again, I'm not quite sure where I will fit this plant eventually. But this one has sized up so much for me in such a short amount of time, because I bought this plant for myself at the beginning of this year, and it wasn't teeny tiny, but it was quite small. In fact, I've got the Anthurium pallidiflorum narrow form to show you here as well, which is basically exactly like this plant, but it is a narrow version. Its leaves are much thinner. And I reckon my Anthurium pallidiflorum here, the big one, was around about that size when I first got it at the beginning of the year. And obviously it has come a huge way in such a short amount of time. And yeah, as I say, it's just one that I really haven't had to worry about, despite the fact that it's been a velvet leaf anthurium. I haven't, like, again, I do not want to jinx this, but I haven't even once had to deal with pests on this plant. I've kept it in my windows over there, and as you can see at the moment, like, I'm filming this in the middle of the day and it's not the brightest out there. It's been getting like decent light, but like nothing excessive, nothing insane. I haven't used any grow lights, and it's just been the most phenomenal grower. Like, I absolutely adore it. And currently, again, I've just made it a little sphagnum moss collar with the top of a milkshake cup, and that seems to be working quite well. But honestly, this plant is just the apple of my eye. I'm so grateful for having it now, but it's one that I'm like, oh, I wish I got it sooner, because it's brought me so much joy in my time of owning it and growing it. And yeah, I just want to continue to bring out the best in it. I need to think about how I can, I don't know, adapt things a little bit so that I'm able to still continue to get it to size up, because it's going to be at the floor before I know it. Also, I was going to say, it has got an inflorescence just there as well. And Oh, in fact, this is the first day where it's actually open a little bit. Starting to open, should I say. If you look the camera will focus very, very, very closely. So yeah, if anybody knows what kind of pollen I could give this plant to hybridize it, let me know. I've got some clarinervium pollen. I highly doubt that would work. God, that would make a beautiful hybrid, but I don't think that would work. But yeah, I could show you this plant all day. I feel so immensely proud of this one and I love it so much. So yes, right, on to the next. And yeah, as I say, the narrow form pallidiflorum that I just showed you, although I haven't had this plant that long, I've only had it for a few months, I predict that it's going to be pretty much exactly the same to grow as the big pallidiflorum, so that's why it is that far up this list. But then the next one, I don't know why, I thought before I had this plant, I would have thought this one would have been way more difficult than it actually has been for me. And this is the Anthurium luxurians. This is a Luxurians platinum, and if you see it in the light, it's kind of got like a bluey tinge to its leaves, more so than the typical Luxurians often has. But it's such a beautiful, beautiful plant. Again, like texture for me, I love this. I know, for example, if you've got like trypophobia or like something like that, you might hate this texture of leaf, but I just think it is beautiful. And I think as well, just that and the shape of the leaves, they're so beautifully love heart shaped. And then they've got these gorgeous red stems as well. It's just such a lovely one. And this one again is growing down in front of my TV, which, as I said earlier in this video, I know has a grow bar there at the moment. It didn't always have a grow bar there, and this one literally was giving me the most beautiful growth when it was getting probably like low to medium light, which is not what's recommended for this plant, but the fact that it didn't give me any grief is just like, I think that's just amazing, because I don't know why it's one that I would have thought maybe was capable of that. But no, I would 100% say from my, like, obviously all of this is just based on my own experience, but from my experience with this plant, I would say that this is a great one for beginners if you are just wanting to get started with anthuriums. And it's also one that just looks a little bit like, I don't know, I know I always say about the word rare and like means different things for different people. This just looks very rare, doesn't it? It looks very glossy and very shiny, and it's not the sort of thing you see every day. And yeah, I just find it so rewarding to grow. Very similarly to a lot of others, this is how I'm growing it. Leca at the bottom, chunky mix on top. I just find that works really, really well. I know I've had questions from you guys saying, why don't I do all semi-hydro or all soil? And I just personally, firstly, I just like growing this way. Like, it feels right in my gut. But also I just feel like having the semi-hydro at the bottom and having a reservoir where the soil can kind of like drain off what it doesn't need and not have the roots be so susceptible in the semi-hydro to root rot. It just feels like a good way of doing things, and it has worked really, really well for me. And also because obviously I have got some soil in there, which I typically mix things like worm castings and lava rock into, I don't need to worry quite so much about fertilisation as I do with my semi-hydro that I don't have added fertiliser with. Not that this is added fertiliser, but you know what I mean, natural fertiliser. But no, it's just a wonderful plant. Wonderful, wonderful plant. I love it so much. And then finally, one of my biggest anthuriums is the Anthurium Big Bill. And I'm sure this one has a better Latin name than I know, so I will put it on the screen. But this is what it looks like. And although I've only had this one a few months, I've got it at the top of this list because this sounds like a weird thing to say, but I feel like I already know it very well because I've had the jungle bush in my collection for many, many years, which actually now lives at my mum's house. It got so big so quickly that I needed to leave it with my mum's when I moved here because I ran out of space. But it's literally, looking at the structure of the plant and looking at its leaves, it is pretty much exactly the same, apart from the fact that this one isn't as upright. And as I say, for that reason, I do feel like I know the plant very well. This new leaf is a fairly new one. It gave me this one, I think it started putting out this leaf about maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it's just kind of hardened off, and it is ginormous. This one, again, if I can find some pictures, I'll put them on the screen, but this one is capable of getting absolutely insanely huge. So I didn't really think that through before getting the plant. I just was keen to get it and thought it was a really beautiful one. So we will figure that out as we go. But yeah, it's been so resilient, so easy. Again, it does kind of trail down, and I love the treely hangy anthuriums. So I hope that at some point when I'm able to do like a big like back wall shelving setup, I'll be able to have it just kind of hanging down and looking all ruffly and gorgeous, and I'll be able to appreciate it in that way. Because at the moment I've got it in the window and it's lovely and it's growing well in the window. It is just blocking out quite a lot of light for other plants. So unless I have accidentally missed any, which I don't think I have, those are currently all of the anthuriums, bar a couple in prop boxes. Those are currently all of the anthuriums in my anthurium collection, my secret anthurium collection. As I say, there are some that I still have got a lot to learn with and a lot to get my head around. So any light that any of you can shed on them, I would be so grateful. But yeah, I've been wanting to chat through them with you for such a long time. I know there's a few in here that I haven't shown you before, and I've been keeping things a little bit quiet for a reason, but yes, it's so fun talking them through with you. I always feel like, I don't know, I feel like you guys are just like my planty friends, and every time I talk about stuff I get to share it, and it's just, I don't know, it makes me realise things about the plants a lot of the time that maybe I didn't realise before, or see things in different lights. So yeah, thank you for that. And I really hope you enjoyed this video as well. And if you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next video.
Stay sexy, plant lovers.